I want to share with you about some of the things that we have to do and opposed to some of the things that we want to do. Because for me, personally, that is a big dilemma in my life. I just love preaching the gospel. I love teaching and equipping and empowering the believers, and that is what fires me up. That's what rocks my boat, if you like. That's the calling that God has placed on my life. Yet I can't do that all the time because there is other things within my life that I need to pay attention to. And one of them is going out to work and earning some money so that I can do those things that I want to do. And I think the whole process of secular and religious is something that we struggle to get right, really, because we think that when we are doing something that's obviously religious, we're preaching the gospel, we're studying the word, we're singing and worshiping God, we can think that that's the only important thing to be doing. And you read in the scripture about David. He worshipped God. It tells us that he had a praise and worship team worshiping God 24/7, so 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they did it for 40 years. And it must have been pretty powerful, because worshiping God is what opens up the windows of heaven. David had such a close relationship with God. God called him a man after his own heart. And even though he committed murder and adultery, God still called him a man after his own heart, which it kind of makes us think again a little bit about the whole forgiveness thing that Jesus has done for us, because there are many times and many evidences in the Bible, in the Old Testament part of the Bible, where God has forgiven people. He's forgiven them of their sins and he's not held them accountable to it. And the key thing that we need to get into our brains is that the people, all of us, are operating under the covenant that we have with God. And that covenant may be the covenant of the Old Testament, the Mosaic covenant, the law covenant, or in David's case, it was his covenant that he had with God. In Abraham's case, it was his covenant that he had with God, that God stood by the covenant, by the promises that it made to each of them. Now, the Mosaic covenant, when it comes to Jesus, when the temple was destroyed in AD 70 and the new covenant was inaugurated, the old covenant came to an end. But the Abrahamic covenant and the Davidic covenant didn't. They were fulfilled in Jesus. They came to their conclusion in the man Jesus. God said to Abraham, "You will be a father of many nations, and many peoples will be blessed because of you." Now just look at what Jesus has done. He stands as a fulfillment of that Abrahamic covenant. He is the one that many nations through him are blessed. He comes as king. Look at the covenant that God had with David. He says, "You will never want for a king to sit on the throne of David." And so we can look at the genealogy down the line and think, I'm not sure that we can see that is a reality in our 2025 life and understanding of the world. But Jesus is, what do we call him? King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He sits on the throne of David, of his father David. So there's those two covenants that come to a climax and fulfillment in Jesus. And yes, you can call upon the covenant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and you will be blessed. But you're far better to call on the covenant of Jesus, because that new covenant is that relationship that we have with God. I listen to so many people. Well, I don't listen because I tend not to listen, but I see so many posts on social media that are still trying to put us under the old covenant. They're still trying to deal with things in our new covenant reality with an old covenant mindset. And that is one of the things that I want to just show you a better way. So I'm going to show you a better way over the next wee while of the new covenant reality. Maybe that's what I'll call this little mini series, New Covenant Reality. What does it mean to live in the new covenant, and how much of the old covenant is relevant to us today? Now, when I say Old Covenant, I suppose really I should say Old Testament and New Testament. We've got that book divided at the beginning of Matthew, the end of, I think it's Micah. And we call it Old Testament, New Testament. But actually, the New Covenant doesn't start until the Last Supper, until Jesus initiates the New Covenant in his blood on the cross. So all through Jesus' ministry, Jesus is ministering under the Old Covenant, under the Mosaic Covenant, the covenant of law and death that the Jewish people of that day worshipped and lived under. So what does it mean, Christian, for us as a New Covenant reality that we have to minister to ourselves and minister to others under that reality? Let's explore this over this next wee while. Catch you later.